our pleasure now to welcome to the show the commissioner of the WNBA. It is Cathy Englebert. Cathy, Craig Hoffman here. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
It's great to be here in the DMV, so it's great to be here for a game tonight.
Absolutely. I was going to ask, I know you're over at ESA and you're in town. What actually brings you to DC? I know you travel, of course, all over the league, but what brings you here now?
Yeah, so Mystics play tonight against the Atlanta Dream at 7 p.m. over at ESA here, and we've had a great day of meeting with Mystics fans and corporate partners, et cetera. So yeah, it's my yearly trip here.
Nice and easy trip down from New York. Of course, there's so much happening in the league, and you guys recently announced that you have two expansion teams coming to the league in Toronto and the Bay Area. The player pool has seemingly been ready for this for a long time. There's been so much talent that hasn't been able to even penetrate the league. But I know there's so much more that goes into expansion than just, hey, we have a bunch of talented players that need jobs. So what are the things that are in place now that allowed for you to make those moves that weren't there before?
Yeah, well, Craig, coming off of raising capital in February of 22, coming out of the pandemic strong, coming from what I call survive to thrive, it was time to expand. We need to be in more markets as the longest tenured women's professional sports team in the country. So adding the Bay Area, hugely accretive, now adding Toronto and essentially a whole country, the country of Canada, hugely accretive as we get into our next media rights negotiation. That's going to be helpful because the more markets you're in, the more fans you build, and the fandom is loyal to your city and loyal to your team. So that's what's happened, and I'm so excited. And we've announced that we have two more coming, and so we'll get up to 16 teams, which I think will be great. It'll give 48 additional roster spots in a league of 144 today. That's pretty good, a 33% increase, more jobs to players, and also the economies in these cities that will impact during the summer months. Whether it's arena workers or workers for the team and things like that, it's going to be great for expansion and for the growth of the league.
I think a lot of us observing, especially those of us that are also huge NWSL fans, I actually used to work for the Spirit here in DC. We watched that league able to expand at a little bit faster rate and wonder, we knew the W would expand eventually. And I'm just I'm asking this, Cathy, not as a place from a place of doubt, but a place of genuine curiosity. What are the main differences between your two leagues that were both trying to grow at the same time that allowed them to expand a little bit faster, whereas the economic situation for you was different and this is the right timeline for your league?
Yeah, it's just a strategy and a philosophical view. We needed to get more of our business transformation done. So my philosophy was, let's get the business transformation done and then expand. Others might say expand and keep your fingers crossed that the business is going to transform. And we were right. We had 24 million people at peak watch that NCAA final, a basketball game. Everyone's talking about women's basketball. Now we're seeing historic numbers in the WNBA for viewership. We outrated the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs on the opening night, and we were on ESPN2. They were on ESPN. So, I think we made the right decision in getting our financial situation in the right place. We're now able to afford charter flights for our players. We're able to give the players a better experience. And so couldn't be prouder of how we did this, following the strategy, coming off tough couple years of the pandemic and raising that capital, deploying that against marketing and a digital transformation. We're making it easier to be a fan. And that's all really aligning nicely as we get into our next round of media rights negotiations.
WNBA Commissioner Cathy Englebert with us here on the Hoffman Show. I want to ask you about those media negotiation rights in a second, but you mentioned the charter flights, and I feel like I have to ask this question, Cathy, because so many fans got involved in that discussion, and we're wondering, kind of the fan version of the question is hey, what took so long? But I on a more genuine way, what were the things that ultimately drove that decision to happen with the timing that it did, where now is the right time, but it also wasn't ready for the regular season?
Yeah, this is a bold decision by us as we got new information about the momentum, the next round of media negotiations. This is also an Olympic year. It's a very tough footprint for our players to play so many games per week in an Olympic year where we have to break for the Olympics, but we still play 40 games. We still have an all-star game. We have a Commissioner Cup championship coming up. So it's all related to this is the right time. We finally feel good that we're not going to jeopardize the financial viability of the league. This is very expensive. It's a bold decision, but I finally felt we were in the right place. It took us 1 week to get it up and running fully for the regular season as of last Tuesday. So 1 week, and we're just excited to give the players that benefit in advance of any future collective bargaining agreement, because now we feel the economic model has been built enough. And it really is in the last month or two that we felt comfortable as we looked out at our financial position, and that we feel like this would be something we could do for the long term, Craig, because it's also not a decision you make for 1 year.
Sure.
You're really making it for decades when you do it, and you're hoping that your revenue build and the growth in our revenue. We've got corporate partners stepping up, our WNBA change makers like AT&T and Nike and Deloitte and CarMax and Google and U.S. Bank. So as you feel comfortable, and as we got so many calls after our draft, our historic viewership on draft, that was kind of the turning point for me, that I felt like we could sustain this, we could sustain the momentum, and therefore we could make this jump and leap financially into affording charter. It's very expensive.
Oh, I would imagine.
But now I feel very confident that we have an economic model and a revenue model that will fund it for the long term. That's what we did not have last year or the year before or the year before. Look, this is something I wanted for the players since I came into the league, but I'm also a business person with 33 years of business experience before I came in here. You've got to build a long-term revenue model to fund it. It's an operating expense, and it's not something you can just do for 1 or 2 years and then you'd be out of business. So I feel confident now that in the future of the league and all the investment and capital inflows into women's sports and into the WNBA, all the interest we're now getting in other cities wanting an expansion team, that's a good sign. That's a competitive sign. All the interest in media companies in the WNBA and carrying our great live products. So those were all the factors that led into it.
I guess my follow-up question, Cathy, would be then, at what point can you start to anticipate? Because I think if you look at the popularity going back to the 23 Final Four, and how much Caitlin and Angel in that game blew up the sport, and the increased numbers that you guys saw in the W last year with ratings and revenue and the whole deal, and anticipating then that rookie class coming in, I think it would be logical to ask, like, okay, at some point you could see this was coming, and that some of this financial viability and some of the need for this was going to be coming. And so something like the charter flights, it took a week, but if you start 3 weeks sooner, then it's ready by the regular season. I'm oversimplifying this because I do not have the 33 years of business experience that you do. I host a talk radio show, but those are the pieces I'm looking at. Can you help me and the audience understand kind of that risk tolerance and the levels here of when you can start to safely anticipate and make some moves ahead of time versus waiting to be financially viable in the way that you are now?
Yeah, I think I told you the new information was coming off draft, a historic viewership number. We had over 3 million people at peak watch our draft. We had never had over 1 million. That was a huge positive sign. That wasn't until April 15th. So as you think about then, as we're starting to negotiate our media rights, starting to think about how that will play out, that's really the thing that funds it in men's sports, by the way, is the billions and billions of dollars of media rights that get paid to the NFL and other leagues. So as you get new information related to that, but look, we've been working on this for years. In fact, we already were going to fund a $4 million fund this year for charter, because we have more back-to-backs because of the Olympic break requiring air travel, as well as our full playoffs. And so we've been chipping away at this, Craig, every year. So chip away. And finally this year, we thought we could expand it to a greater amount at the start of the season. So, and again, the Olympic, I can't stress enough, when you have to break in a 4.5-month season for 23 days for the Olympics, that's a big deal too. So that's kind of, it was kind of the confluence of all these factors coming together at the same time, off of the Final Four, which obviously wasn't until early April, our draft, then our training camp, which was reduced this year. So it was all factoring into that, and then the start of thinking through the future of our media rights and our corporate partners stepping up in a bigger way, even since draft and since, coming off the Final Four as well. So, and just to comment on, you need 3 things in sports. You need household names, rivalries, and games of consequence. And March Madness had all of that. It had it last year. That's where rivalry. But we were already building rivalries and super teams through our very active free agency coming off our last collective bargaining agreement. So that was already all happening here. And I think these players who are under NIL, name, image, likeness contracts in college are now getting more opportunities. They're coming in with big brands. So I think that's going to sustain the momentum. The other thing I was looking at was the future rookie classes. I mean, literally bringing in JuJu Watkins in a couple of years from USC, bringing in Kiki Rice from UCLA, Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame, Paige Beckers from UConn. So it wasn't just about this rookie class that weighed in and is going to weigh into the economics of this league. I feel so blessed to be in women's basketball because it's the next 4 years and probably beyond that we're going to have this generational talent with big brands coming into the league.
Two more questions for Commissioner Cathy Englebert of the WNBA here on the Hoffman Show. We'll wrap in a moment, Cathy, with those media rights and kind of where we stand. Adam Silver's had some recent comments. I know you've been talking about them as well. But you actually just brought up something that I wanted to ask you about as well. In conjunction with expansion and with all this talent that is coming into the league, do you think that there's a chance that you will revisit the age limit where a player like DC's own Kiki Rice probably could play and be all right in the league coming out after her freshman or sophomore year. But currently the way the age limit works, you have to wait a little bit longer. And I totally respect that if you're the WNBA PA with such limited job opportunities for the players. As you mentioned, the league right now at 144. You mentioned earlier how many jobs are coming with the 2 and then 2 more, ultimately 4 expansion teams. Do you think that's an area that could get revisited as some of these college stars are maybe a little bit more ready to come into the WNBA at younger ages?
I am sure that is something we'll be talking about in the next round of collective bargaining, which will be, probably this time next year that would start. But I don't have the answer to that today. I'm sure that'll be something we all need to consider. I did, when I came into the league, I did ask the question, why is that? And, if the average tenure of a WNBA player is 4.5, 5 years, most professional athletes, it is like that. You want to make sure that they have a path post their playing career to do something for the next 30, 40 years of their life. So to the extent they can have more opportunities, whether it's in college or in the W, to, build some wealth, and then what they do after, it was nice that they have a college, degree and things like that to do something post their playing career, because not everybody's going to play for the number of years that a Sue Bird or Diana Taurasi has played for. So but I'm sure it'll be a topic of conversation going forward.
Yeah, I still would like to just know what Sue ate and what Diana is still eating for breakfast, but that's I can do that investigative journalism another time. Last but not least, you mentioned this a number of times in our chat here. You are, along with the NBA, undergoing these media rights negotiations. Adam Silver was quoted, I think it was about a month ago, amongst other places that I'm sure he's talked about it, that there will be at least some WNBA rights that are in this NBA media rights deal. What can you tell us about the intertwining of those two and where we stand with the next iteration of WNBA coverage?
Yeah, I think we have a great opportunity, and what I call it's going to market together, because with the NBA, the WNBA adds to programming across over 330 days or so across the year. And if you think about how much the media model has shifted to streaming platforms and subscription models, so even the traditional media companies have their streaming subscriptions, like a Peacock, like a ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, et cetera, Max. And then you look at now the new media companies, let's call them, a lot of the technology companies like an Amazon, Apple, Netflix, who are also on subscription models. So I think there's a huge advantage from that perspective to going to market. Because we play kind of in opposite seasons, can provide over, basically 12 months of live programming across those dimensions. We're probably one of the few leagues that can couple together and do that. So there'll be a tranche that is go to market with the NBA, and then a tranche of W only deals, just like we have today, because we have, Scripps Ion today, as well as CBS and Amazon that the NBA doesn't have, and the NBA has WBD that we don't have. So I think we'll have a hybrid going forward, and we'll use the best of both worlds, and it's hugely advantageous. And I admire, everything the NBA has done in building out their global platform and things like that. So going to market with them is an advantage on part of this. And then we'll have additional opportunities for games, especially with expansion. We'll have more games because we're adding teams, more games for national platforms and media companies to pick up. So I'm really excited and looking forward to the next phase here.
How hard is it to negotiate in this media environment? Because I know for me, people will say, oh, what do you want to do in 10 years? I'm like, I don't know. Do you think I know what the media environment is going to be in 10 years? I hope to be working for somewhere talking into a microphone. I don't know where that gets broadcast or put on the internet or wherever, because it's changing so much. So as you and Adam and your teams negotiate this, how hard is it to try to look ahead when we don't really know where the media is going?
Yeah, I think one of the nice things about being in live sports and having live sports as your product, and when you're the best basketball in the world, like the NBA is and the WNBA, you're a sought after, platform. And so I think, again, the more national we get, the more global we get. That's why bringing Canada in was important. And hopefully we can do the global games like the NBA has done in the future. I think, again, live sports is really keeping a lot of that programming alive on a lot of these networks. So I think we're in a really good position. So I see all the disruption. We've monitored it, but I still think live sports is such a valuable asset to these media companies going forward. So we're excited to get into it.
No doubt about it. Cathy Englebert, Commissioner of the WNBA. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy DC, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again down the road.
Thank you, Craig. Really appreciate the support. Take care.
Absolutely. That's Cathy Englebert with us here, the commissioner of the WNBA here on The Hoffman Show. We will react to some of what she said later on in the show. But up next, 5 o'clock, Not My Beat, Clinton Yates joins us for a special visit and a rewriting of Major League Baseball's record books.